What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? You are on the sidelines with the sideline guys. And today, we are back again, once again, with another very special MMA edition of the show. And I'm being joined once again by my guy, the man with no esteem, straight from Aberdeen. My guy, Sean Negrong. How's it going, brother?
It's going well, man. It's going well. What a fantastic weekend we just had. This was awesome. Now we get a little bit of a break before we head right back to the fight nights. But man, I am so glad that UFC 300 delivered. Did I think it was going to be the best card ever? No, but I think that is arguably in the top 10 of best cards that we've ever seen, and I'm just glad it definitely delivered.
Hey, put your fucking nuts on the table. It was the best card ever that the UFC has offered. I will confidently state that. There has been better MMA cards, but we could have that discussion on another day. But real quick, before we get into anything, I just wanted to verify because I know that Sean doesn't really look into these things when it comes to breaking news. I just wanted to right off the top, we got some breaking news for you guys. For the first time after UFC 300, since we began our Dynasty MMA journey, Sean is a leader in all-time win percentage this year, and this comes off the heels of him scoring an outstanding 7-1 record this past week for UFC 300. So props to Sean. The guy caught me finally. I still call bullshit because I have more wins and less losses. But I unfortunately have like more ties than you, so that
Yeah, that win
waters
percentage
down
is
my
a
win
bitch now,
percentage.
huh?
Yeah, it is. It is a bitch,
Yeah.
but it's okay. It's okay. I'll definitely bounce back. Shout out to Sean for having a great week. He went 7-1, with his lone loss being, who was it again?
Probably Charles.
Yeah. Charles Oliveira, and I went 6-4. Not a bad week, but just not as good as 7 and fucking 1. So respect, good job,
Put some respect on my name.
congratulations. But as I let that out, I just got to remind you guys, I have widened my lead in our head-to-head picks for 2024. I went 9-4 for UFC 300, while Sean went 8-5. So our 2024 standings are as follows: I have 104 wins, 68 losses, and 3 ties, giving me a 63% win percentage. While Sean has 100 wins, 60 losses, 3 ties, which I mean, 3 no contests, which leaves him with a 61% win percentage. Not too far, but goddamn it, a 4 point lead feels amazing. And I'm gonna get you this week, so it's all good. We'll bounce back in the dynasty shape of things. But how do you feel about this change in events at UFC 300? It's historic for many reasons.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was telling you when we first started this. That it would take me a little bit, but don't worry, I'd come back and I'd come get you. And that's exactly what's happened here. And I'm glad it happened. It's such a historic event. I think we could pull back the tape. I think I've been saying this since the start. That enjoy your moment. Enjoy your moment, okay? This is your one moment, one shot, one opportunity, and you let it slip, okay? You let it slip. And now here I come, the boogeyman. I've taken your dynasty. I'm coming back for the pick'ems. You're losing it, and you're gonna come crying to me, begging for me to lose my picks, or purposely bet against myself. Like we have in the NBA right now. I this is what we're getting, and it's okay. We're only 1 year in. Hopefully by year 3, year 4, you're not just so far behind you can't even see first place. So enjoy it, and I'm going to enjoy it right now. Just enjoy it for yourself that you're this close to me and this close to greatness.
Dude, I was about to say, like, I don't think in the year plus we've been doing this show, I've ever seen you this fired up for anything. So just gotta shows you the kind of rain I had before this week. And I would love
Right.
if after the next Apex card, I'm in the lead again after this fucking rant.
Yeah.
But only time will tell. I know you're not catching me on the pickums though. So
Oh,
but
I'll catch
honestly,
you.
bro,
Enjoy your
awesome
you're
year. Wait,
Jose Aldo
hey,
right
let
now.
me
I'm
let me
Conor
fucking
McGregor.
compliment
Okay.
you, all right? Stop cutting me off. Let me compliment you, all right? gotta give you props where it's due. I'm doing well in Dynasty this year, and you're doing fucking phenomenal. You for the year are 41, 24, and 1 no contest, while I'm sitting at 39, 30, and 3 no contests. So you're really fucking killing it this year, and obviously that's what has made the biggest difference for you. But all right, enough with the fucking respect. Fuck this guy. Let's move on to what I'm most excited for. To remind the people to follow the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube. And you could also find me on TikTok as well as the site formerly known as Twitter, the X Machine at Negron MMA. Been having some fun posting some TikToks and posting random thoughts on my Twitter as well. So follow me there if you're interested for more content. Sean, where can the people find you?
Well, I know where they can find me, and I can't wait till they find you on this website as well. But bsreports.org is my website where Chris, whenever he decides to actually do something, will release a article sometime on whatever the Fridays that he says it's this upcoming Friday, whatever that upcoming Friday will be. That's when we'll get an article from Chris. But that's where you can find me and a bunch of other writers that I have. If you ever want to get started in the sports writing industry or in that industry in any capacity, hit me up and I'll help you out.
I love that you always find a way to make a runway for that because I definitely did say Friday, but I never said which Friday. So god
Brother,
damn it.
brother, 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 you said October. Let's not forget.
I
When
know,
I
I know.
no, first of all,
I
I
know.
said
We're almost in
October
fucking May.
and
It's
you
bad.
said
It's
don't
bad.
insult me like that. That's
Yeah,
was your response.
I remember saying that too.
And here we are in almost May.
Yeah. I've eaten a shit
You didn't say
sandwich
which
at this
October,
point.
so
Yeah. Hey, someone's got to edit the show, god damn it. But with all that being said, let's get right into our breakdown of UFC 300, our full UFC 300 recap. And it's only right that we alternate like we do regularly on this show. So, Sean, why don't you lead the dance with our curtain jerker, Deividson Figueredo, getting the second round submission via rear naked choke against Cody Garbrandt.
wow, is that your setup? All right.
Yeah, I was
Um,
waiting. You didn't fucking
yeah,
catch it.
well, you emphasized your voice. So I thought you had something more to say. But anyway, I think it went, to be honest with you, exactly how we had both pictured it. If I remember correctly, I think we both saw Davison coming out with the victory. I thought more it was going to be later on. I think I remember saying it was round 3, but I do have to say that you were right on the fact of how Cody came out. You know, I thought Cody was going to be a little bit more aggressive, so to speak, very aggressive out of that first round. I thought he was going to try to make Deividson uncomfortable early and sort of then kind of just control the cage and then, you know, eventually try to piece apart Deividson, while Deividson was going to try to do his best to bring himself towards the middle and eventually get the clinch and, you know, the grappling going. And I have to say he was a little slow to start, and I think nothing pisses me off more than watching the fans. I felt like this happened a lot where the fans were booing so early on in this whole card, like the second anyone grabbed each other. And it was just like, I really don't understand whether fans think they're here for boxing or for whatever they're here for. I don't really know. But to keep it on this fight, man, I really did love this fight. I was actually really happy with how Cody looked as well. Like I didn't go into the end of this thinking, you know what, this is the end for Cody. I think Cody should hang it up. I felt like Cody did a pretty great job himself, and I have to give it to Deividson. Deividson looks like he fits right at home in this division. Like he's not killing himself to make this weight. I think I don't even know what he's ranked now. I haven't checked his ranking, but I'm really excited to see what he gets next. I was going to ask you, who do you think that with the win against Cody, obviously Cody, former champion, kind of falling off, trying to bring himself back, what would you want? And you obviously you could take this and go with your analysis, but where would you go with him now with Deividson? And is going to his third fight, I think, in this division coming up. Where would you want to see him go next?
So I love that you asked me that question right out the chute. I'll answer your question first and then give my thoughts on the fight. I think that My first thought, and the fight that I've wanted since he announced he was gonna come into the bantamweight division, was him and Peter Yan. I think that fight would be an amazing stylistic matchup and really help them showcase the best versions of themselves, which will make it for an awesome fight for the fans. If we do end up getting that, I would love to see that like a 5 round main event instead of just like a regular 3 rounder. I think that'll be an awesome fight atop one of these shitty Apex cards. But as far as realistic options, just because obviously um Peter Yan injured after his last fight. It feels like he gets injured every time he fights, unfortunately. Um so the main two people that came up in my mind was first obviously Peter Yan. But then next, I'm like thinking further down the line, you don't want to give him someone that's off of a loss necessarily, right? So how do we play this out? We've got a Brazilian prospect making his way through this division. Why don't we mix it up? Why don't we make it interesting over here? Um, we already know the way this division's going to be shaping out, and I think he's at the top side of it, right? I don't want to see him against someone that is coming off of a loss, but there is someone that is coming off of a title fight that I think matches up very well with Davison, and that would be Marlon Chito Vera. Once again, a situation where both of these guys really stylistically would bring the best out of each other. And hell yeah, I would love that fight. I think that'll be stupid violence to say the least. And honestly, a pretty favorable matchup, all things considered, recently, especially for Chito Vera. But with all that being said, as far as the fight goes, what really enjoyed the performance from Davison. I thought this fight was a little weird though, right? Like I thought, especially with how slow it was early on. And I definitely did call that, by the way. I was like, yeah, there's gonna be a feeling out process for sure. But I thought it was clear that both guys really had the intention to come out there and grapple and like mix things up. Um, but I really was fascinated by how well Davison is doing in these phases, just because we saw this game at flyweight, right? But I just think physically with making that big cut, he just didn't feel comfortable really to show this side of his game. And it's really refreshing to see someone that's known primarily, right, for their marauding power and their strength at 125 to really show a complete grappling game, whether it be baiting opponents into shots and landing beautiful duck under double legs, or just being able to methodically keep at it, right? Like it's not easy to maintain a grappling game plan no matter what weight class you're in, but specifically when you are continuing to do it. And I think he just showed that he's really comfortable there in a way that I wasn't really sure of coming into the division. Obviously, we saw those improvements against Rob Font, but just given his style, like I think he is seriously going to be more so of a grappler first at this division and be confident in doing that. And that's honestly a surprise to me. I think once we see his striking unleashed in this division too, I feel like we're going to get a better idea of where his ceiling is. But I think he's right up there with the top guys as far as being a potential title contender. How do you feel about his prospects at 35?
Well, I think he's well based on what his ranking is, which I was checking. He's six now, so which is kind of a little bit of a surprise for me. I'm not gonna lie, I did not expect that big of a jump, especially going over someone like Song or Umar and stuff like that. I didn't expect that, but you know what? I was exactly in agreement with you. I think Cheeto was next for him. I think that's a good fight for both of them, and I think that kind of will be like a make or break sort of thing for Davison of whether he can really crack this top five in this division. And I think someone like Cheeto is perfect to figure out whether you could beat someone like Cheeto or not. Because I honestly, this is just my opinion here. I really don't see Cheeto better than Marab or someone like Sean O'Malley. I didn't think the I don't think he is or Corey or anything like that. So I think that's a perfect test to right before getting a number one contender sort of fight. Um, I think that's the fight to make. I was surprised. That's why I had to check. I thought Figueredo was maybe in like top 10 top maybe 9. But to see him at 6 already past Song, I feel like that's a little messed up. But I think that what you said, I agree with, and I think that those two fighting next can't do that at the Apex, man. Those two are fan favorites and from their countries. That's like something you got to do, like at a fight night in like who the hell knows, like in Atlantic City, a smaller venue, not like a big arena sort of thing, but that's a great main event to have, and definitely 5 rounds. You got to make that 5 rounds. One's a champion, one's fought for a championship. Cheeto is known. He's like Nate Diaz in a way, is known for getting going after like halfway through the 3rd round. So I think that's something where that's a really, really fun fight, and I would love to see who wins that one.
Yeah, man. Honestly, really got myself excited for that because I didn't even really consider it before you asked me the question. Next up, if you're good on that, we can move on to Bobby Green getting the unanimous decision victory against Jim Miller.
It was.
Mila. Yeah, I just gotta say what you want. Obviously, we know where the bonuses went at this point, and we'll get there when we get there. But this is one of my favorite fights of the night, man. This fight was awesome. Hell of a way, card placement wise, to really get some momentum going, right? Especially early on in this card. As far as how the fight actually played out, was honestly very surprised. Like I was completely wrong about Jim Miller. His game plan was kind of what I thought Bobby Green's game plan would be, which was to really land that big shot and get Bobby Green out of there. He hurt him pretty significantly. I would say about 3 times throughout the course of this fight, which was very surprising, to be honest. I thought, although he clearly had a power advantage, I thought the speed discrepancy was very obvious. But Jim Miller's just a tough motherfucker, man. Like we already knew this, but obviously dealing with both of those cuts, first the one underneath the eye and then the one above the eye, which developed in the third, and just blood and guts everywhere. And he still didn't give a fuck. Still hurt Bobby Green in the third, and could have rallied there to get a finish. So uh, just respect to both of these guys as far as the theme of the BMF title and what that means. I think both of these guys really embodied that spirit in this fight, and you got to give props to Bobby Green, man. I think at this point of his career, he definitely is chinnier than he's ever been in his career. I think it's very fair to say that. Just thinking back in his last couple fights, I mean, we saw him get rocked by Tony Ferguson in their fight. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I think obviously he is older in his career as well and has a lot of fights on his belt. So I think that plays a big factor on it. But I think his speed, his timing, trickery on the feet is going to give anybody trouble in this division. But I think that last push, right? To really try to make a title contention route. I think that definitely got snuffed out by Jalen Turner in their fight, and just the changes. Like in all honesty, I know this fight was booked many times before, but I don't really think there was a time where I would have picked Jim Miller in this hypothetical matchup. But the fight played out much closer than that rationale plays out. So interesting fight, definitely an awesome fight, right? The fans won this one, but a little weird for both of these guys as far as the later stage of their career and where they go moving forward. How did you feel about this lightweight fight?
Honestly, I this is one of my favorite fights of the entire card, but I was a little disappointed in a way of like obviously because I picked Jim Miller, but this is why I did a lot of what I did in this card was because I knew I was either gonna win in the pick'ems or I was gonna win in the dynasty because I picked a lot against my own dynasty picks. So I was actually not even to like go off track. I was actually pretty surprised I only lost to you by 1 in the pick'ems because it kind of everything turned out right for me in my dynasty, and that's exactly the opposite of what I was trying to do. But in this fight, Miller was a little slow for me. Like in the beginning, I liked it. Both were trading right hand for right hand. Green was landing some kicks. Even Miller was going for the low kicks. And I'm pretty positive that Miller cracked Green first. You had Green drop a little bit, but then Green kind of like stayed with that momentum or even got like better, if that makes any sense. And as you saw, Miller sort of slow down after that second round, or going into that second round. You really saw Miller sort of slow down, like they were both going for the 300K, and like the gas tank ran out too early for Miller. It felt like Miller kind of gassed out. Obviously, he's been doing this for forever. UFC 100, 200, now at 300. It was a great fight. I loved it. I give Miller huge props for going in there, breaking I think it was his left hand in the first round. He said he couldn't see out of his right eye or his left eye after the second round. I think he also did something where he hurt himself again. But just the fact that he kept going, and it just shows like that was sort of not a BMF, but those two were two bad motherfuckers that night. And to be honest with you, though, like when I look at it towards the future for either of them, it doesn't really matter to me, because I don't look at Bobby beating Jim Miller like, man, he's back to his prime. Holy shit, this is turning back the clock. His next fight, he's gonna do the same. Like, if he's going up against Moicano or some shit, next, which he won't, I don't have him as the favorite, nor do I think he really has a significant chance. And the fact that Jailin, which we'll get to, lost, he kind of is in a stuck place right now. And that's why in the rankings, Bobby didn't move anywhere. If anything, I think he even went down one in the rankings, because a win over Jim Miller, yes, it was fantastic. And thank God, that's the part I love too, is the reason I picked Jim Miller was because I was really worried about how Bobby Green would look after getting knocked out the way he did against Jailin, the ref letting that go. I really was worried about how Bobby would come back from it, and he looked fantastic. It didn't look like it phased him or affected him, I should say, in any way going into this fight. So I'm excited for what Bobby Green has next. But if I look at it right now, real quick, if I look at what would be next for someone like Bobby Green, right above him is RDA and Benoit Saint Denis. And I really, to be completely honest with you, I don't see a situation where he's beating any of those two guys. RDA is a great fight, both legendary names, but I still would pick RDA in that one. And Benoit Saint Denis was just fighting Dustin Poirier not too long ago, and I would definitely have Benoit in that one. So I'm kind of in a stuck place with Bobby Green. I think Jim Miller is going to fight 4 more times because he desperately wants that 50 fights. And I think he looks still pretty solid. Like he doesn't look like, someone like Donald Cerrone, or, guys who clearly were past their prime, Tony Ferguson, and guys who should have let it go. He still looks pretty good. Like he can, be the gatekeeper of the unranked. So I hope the best for him, but Bobby Green, I still don't know what's next.
This guy just loves hurting me on this show, just bringing me pain as often as possible. You hate to see it. But next up, we've got of course the Sean MMA main event, if you ask me. We had Jessica Andrade defeating Marina Rodriguez via split decision. I thought that split was a little egregious, if I'm being honest, but you lead the dance, brother. This is your fight. How did you feel about this women's strawweight bout?
Well, when you say it like that, are you saying it more as like it shouldn't have been split, like Andrade should have won unanimous, or you think that Marina should have won?
Yeah, I think Andrade should have won unanimously. I thought it was pretty
Okay. That's
clear
what I
that
thought too.
she did the right work, and I also said this is your fight because you picked it correctly.
I
You
did.
picked Jessica Andrade,
I
and I
did.
picked Marina Rodriguez.
And
So
having
please,
it was a double win for me. Having it was the,
hmm
having her in Dynasty. This is one of those like moments for me. And
yeah, good shit.
and I actually I really thought I picked Marina in this one. I'm surprised I stuck with Jessica, because going into that fight, like I said, to you, I was working, so a lot of the times I'm checking in and for these early fights, and I had to say, man, I was surprised with Marina. I felt like Marina kind of, I don't even know how to explain it. Like I thought Marina had the edge, but I felt like Marina was too, not lost in the moment, but I felt like wasn't trigger happy. Like was kind of like stuck. I felt like she wasn't really pushing the pedal like I thought she would have. And like when Jessica, like she was going after Andrade's legs, And I thought that was going to be like a great game plan. But then I felt like once Andrade took her down and like secured top position, it almost felt like Marina like left her body in that moment. I know this sounds weird, but it almost felt like I was in slow motion with Marina for the rest of that fight. Like, and even when Andrade was piecing her up, it looked like Marina was just kind of taking it. Like she knew she was getting hit and was just backing towards the cage and was kind of just letting it happen. And I was so surprised by that because I felt like even when Marina was firing back, it was nothing to the combinations that I've seen from her in the past, and something I thought that she could have had the edge in for how she's had tremendous volume in her past fights. So I thought she could have at least tried to compete with Andrade in the stand up, and I thought with her taking down the legs that Andrade would kind of become slower, and that's where Marina would sort of step in and piece her up. But I felt like it was the exact opposite. And Marina, like her game plan failed, and then she almost just like became stagnant herself. And that's why I didn't think this was split at all. I thought maybe she could have snuck away with one round, but I definitely didn't see her taking two. And I was very surprised with the decision, but I'm glad that Andrade ended up getting the win.
Yeah, great shouts, man. I was definitely conflicted during this fight because initially I felt kind of the way you felt, right? You see them squaring off, and you're like, man, this looks pretty favorable, right? All things considered. And then the fight started, and it just got weird for me, man. I think Marina definitely looked a step slow out there, and I agree with you. I think that was like demoralizing for her. And after that moment, it was like, man, I'm sure for a bulk of her training camp, she trained to be in those positions, but on in the reverse, right? To be on top and to be able to control Andrade, being the smaller fighter. But once she saw herself out of that situation, it kind of was like, damn, what the fuck did I train for? And it definitely was demoralizing for her. I agree. I think I don't know what was holding her back. Maybe the fear of those takedowns, maybe the fear of getting hit with a shot on the counter. But it just felt to me like she was a step slow and almost out of ideas by the end of the third round. That's why I was like, I don't like as I was watching this fight. This was one of those fights where I was like, man, this was just a bad read on my part. Like, regardless of how I might have felt on anything, like I genuinely feel like this was a terrible pick on my part. And I think that's easier in hindsight to say more so than most fights. But I think this was just it just felt terrible. Like as I'm watching it, I'm like, how the fuck did I not see this coming? So shouts to you, great pick on that one. And I think moving forward, obviously Jessica Andrade, the woman's BMF was something that she was talking about a lot throughout this week, and I would love to see something like that um, be made in a natural way, right? I don't think it's going to be for her, with all due respect. Shout out, but I don't. I would love to see that happen at some point for the women's division. But she's definitely one of those people that should be considered in that situation if that ever does happen. All things considered, I don't really know what I want for her next, right? There's so many good fighters and great contenders at this division, and a lot that she's already fought. So kind of puts us in a weird spot. Don't really know necessarily what I would want next for Jessica Andrade. But I think yeah, like look at just look at who's available, right? We got Verna underneath her by 1 point in the rankings. She hasn't fought her yet, but then above her, all people she already fought and lost against. So just kind of in a tough position in the division. I would love to see at some point her get a rematch with Zhang Weili. Um, Especially if she continues her dominant reign as champ. That's something that might just happen down the line just because hey, we need somebody. And you're the highest ranked of the people who hasn't fought her most recently. Like I could definitely see that happening as well. But at this point, fuck it, give her Verna Gen Jehoba. Let's find out where the fuck we're looking at the start of the fight and see if we're still looking there at the end of the fight. So that's what I would like next for Jessica. Any thoughts?
No, I was gonna say I think that's the fight to make because I think this division is gonna be a little bit held up. I think Tatiana should be next. You know, if whatever the injury is and she comes back and whatever. But I think there's gonna be a little bit of whatever Zhang Weili wants to do if she wants to take a second herself. I think in her post fight she was saying that she's gonna go home and figure out what's next. She might take a little bit of time off, but I don't know what Tatiana's, timeline is, but I would have to believe that she's gotta be next, right? Like I think she's clearly deserves it at this point. And then so in that time frame, I think you could definitely do someone like Andrade or Virna, because whoever wins that, I think UFC hoping it's Virna because they get new blood in there. Um, then you can have Virna right after that. Like you kind of want to always have when you have a contender there, you need to have two or three right there behind them, to keep the shit moving. And I think Virna's next after Tatiana, and I think Virna still needs one more fight. You know how many times I say this. I think Virna's definitely has to be next, for after, but she needs one more. So that's what I would do.
I love it. Next up, we've got. I cannot afford to lose. Fucking my favorite fighter right now. Motherfucking Renato Moicano. God damn. This was a run I've never imagined in my wildest dreams, and I never could have imagined the star turn of Renato Moicano. Obviously, the skills were always there, and there was always an admiration for what he's able to do on both, not both, in all phases of mixed martial arts. But damn, this guy's personality is just fucking electric, dude. I'm never, well, never say never, but I'm going to be very hesitant to put any sort of stock in Jailin Turner moving forward, just because this was such a boneheaded, stupid loss, in my opinion. I say this admitting fully that I bet money on Jailin Turner by knockout. I will say this very, very transparently. Uh, but a very strange position to be in when you're staring at that ticket, man, and you're like, damn, this could have happened. This should have happened, right? But hell of a comeback win for Renato. I thought he was out there, man, and the dude just got up like fucking Undertaker, right? Like nothing happened. Like, like nothing happened, literally, and then just got right to it. Ended up getting on top and just fucking swarming them. To me, it really did feel like Jailin quit out there. Very similar to the last fight, but to a much bigger extent. Where once the tide really flipped, and he already thought he won, but then he lost. Um, he just was fully drained out there after that. Really had nothing to offer in the grappling as far as resistance. And let's just be frank, like showing any signs of really committing to escaping. Like it was just I'm gonna try and survive, and hopefully I make it to the next round. And he got fucking pounded out for it. So, shout out to Renato Moicano. This was a phenomenal performance to be able to come back from the depths of hell. Honestly, I thought he was done for, and just a matchup that I really saw going one way. And then when it ended, I'm just like, man, that's fucking crazy. And then the dude gets on the mic and just makes it 15 times better. So shout out to Renato Moicano. Every time this man fights, I'm gonna be tuning in and I'm gonna be hyped.
Yeah, man, I have to agree with so much what you just said. I felt like with Jalen, it's almost like you kind of know his blueprint like mentally, and if he's dominating the fight, or he feels that he's strong enough to win that first round, or whatever the case may be, you almost feel like he's confident. But the second he starts to lose grip of the round, or he doesn't think he's got it, you almost see like he becomes so rejected within himself, and that it's just like it's like a complete 180 of what we saw. Obviously when you were mentioning his previous fight, like his not his fight against Bobby Green, but the one against Dan Hooker was the fight where it's like you saw him dominating those first, that first round and a half, but then seeing Dan Hooker survive that fucking head kick, and I still don't understand how, and then seeing Dan Hooker just absolutely come after him, it just you saw Jailin depleted, and that's kind of what happened here. The Jailin, you saw Moicano was so desperate for the clinch early in round one that you saw Jailin. That was exactly what Jailin had come up with in camp. They knew that's what he was going to try to do, and you knew that if he could just keep Moicano away, then he had a real shot. But you saw Moicano eventually just smother him, get the clinch, kind of take him, and then obviously you get that I think it was his right hand that drops him. I think he's probably had that moment replay in his head at least 5,000 times of he should have just pounced on him. and just ended that fight, because we're talking about a completely different situation here. Moicano loses via TKO or KO, and Jailin gets on the rise. He's looking at maybe one more fight to being in the top five. Like he was right there as to what this division holds. And to for some reason, I still don't understand, after you just had 2 fights ago, a fight with Dan Hooker where you thought you had the win in the bag and you saw this major comeback, and then you drop this dude Moicano, and that dude is coming back for his, he's fighting for the money. That he's desperate for a win. And to give him the air to come back up after getting dropped, and you're afraid to even get close to him, why would you get that second opportunity? You just landed a clean punch that could have a couple ground and pounds, and this could have been over. So this is a tough pill to swallow for him, and I give everything in the world to Moicano here for coming back from getting dropped and just absolutely smothering him at the end of the first, smothering the shit out of him in the second, taking him down. And that's the thing too we've seen with Jailin. It's like once he's taken down, you almost feel like he's got nowhere to go in his mindset of like, how do I get out of this? It's almost, you almost see a complete difference of like watching someone, who actually is in this world of mixed martial arts to someone who's not on the ground game. And there was a complete difference there, and you just get overwhelmed. And I think that's what Moicano came in to do. And you saw a complete flip, and from when Jailin let him stand back up thinking he had a walk-off, to him pleading for his life as he's getting grounded and pounded at the end of that second round. So what an incredible fight from Moicano. Like you said, as the train goes by and agrees with me, I am very excited to see what Moicano has next, and I really don't know what happens with Jailin from here.
Random theory, as you were talking, it kind of all just came together for me. What if Jalen Turner knocked out Bobby Green and it just felt so bad and was like, man, like I don't want to have to do that shit ever again. And then when this fight was going on, he dropped Renato. Renato gets back up to his feet, and you see him literally pleading with the ref, like, "Hey, man, I promise you, this guy's out on his feet." And don't get me wrong, I say this to say, and I think I mentioned this to you over text. He 100% was right. He wasn't wrong as far as how fucked up Moicano was. If you go back and look at that sequence, he doesn't even hit Moicano. He pushes him, and Moicano falls literally head first into the canvas, away from Jalen Turner. So he was 100% right. But at the same time, um, I really wonder how much that last result played into this, as far as him literally pleading with the ref to stop the fight.
Yeah,
When in reality, we saw he has that killer instinct in the last fight. There was none of that, right? There was no, I mean, after the fight, it was kind of like, "Hey, ref, what the fuck?" But in the moment, it never felt like, "Hey, you see this, right?" We
yeah.
see that a lot. There's a lot of fighters in the UFC that do that, right? Especially, let's be honest, in women's MMA, where they're landing shots over and over again, and then they're just kind of like, like literally looking at the ref, like, "Hey, you see this, right?" Um, I once again, terrible decision making in this fight, and it sucks that it played out like this. I do disagree with you on one thing, though. I think Jalen Turner is better on the ground than he gets credit for. I just feel like this was just a calamity of errors, and once it all fell apart, I just really feel like he checked out there. Like it really did feel like at that point, let's survive and get out of here. That's kind of what it felt like. Let's not get finished. Let's not give him the bonus, but let's just get the fuck out of here. And that's definitely how it felt. I agree with you. I don't know what's next for either of these guys, to be honest. I think Renato obviously at the higher end of 155, but even in the fights that he wins against Drew Dober and Jalen Turner, he still ends up looking very vulnerable out there. So I don't know what's next for Renato, but goddamn, honestly, for the majority of the night, all I kept thinking about was I cannot afford to lose, and that was just fucking peak 300 moment for me right there. So shout out to Renato Moicano. Next up, we've got another fight that fucking Sean just nailed. So I love that you're getting this first. Diego Lopes absolutely stuns Sadiq Yusuff with the round one TKO via ground and pound after rocking him with the sequence of strikes. Sean, how the fuck did you see this coming so crystal clearly? And even when it played out, did you believe that? Goddamn, this guy really could do it, and goddamn it, he just did it.
Honestly, this was the toughest fight I think I had to make throughout the entire card, because I picked, Lopez to win, but I kept thinking about Yusuff's last fight against Edson Barboza, and I just kept thinking, like, his power, the way he can handle 5 rounds. I thought, obviously this was only a 3-round fight, but I figured, you know what? I really don't think this cardio is going to be an issue. I really thought, just the physical strength of Yusuff was going to be really difficult for someone like Diego Lopez. And then I picked Diego because I knew that he had the crazy submission, and, putting him on a 300 card with a $300,000 bonus, you knew that someone was going to have something crazy. Did I expect it to be Max Holloway as well? No, but I knew that someone was going to do something crazy on this card, and I just felt, his hype was so real, and the fact that the UFC would put him against someone like Sadiq, who I felt was only a couple fights away from himself getting a title shot. I thought this was a really fun fight against someone on the up and coming, and versus Yusuff, who's also like a prospect, but kind of has earned his way to being a threat. And seeing, Lopez start this fight, kind of circling the cage, but kind of with hitting those leg kicks, and obviously landing that combination to get Yusuff to faint and just fall right into the uppercut. That was pretty textbook, man. I looked at that as like they had probably saw that in film so many times of how he feints, and how, if you go for the legs, or if you fake the the takedown, or whatever the case may be, that he will jump or kind of clinch downward. And what a beautiful moment for Lopez, man. They definitely saw that, or they definitely had a fantastic camp. And I don't even know where to look at Lopez next. Like, it's awesome to see a Cinderella story. Him taking that short notice fight against I think it was Movsar, if I remember correctly, and to now bring all the way full circle to here, he's a ranked fighter. I don't know what's next for him. I don't know what his potential of his peak could be, and it hurts me more. It's as fantastic it is that Lopez won. It hurts me more to see Yusuff like this, because I think Yusuff is a lot better than what his ranking might be, and I don't even think he's ranked now. I think they pushed him off the ranking, or he's 15 now. But I think he's so much better than what he is, and I can't wait to see the both of them fight next, because I think their story is still completely untold, and they both have such a bright future. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see these two again, long term in the future.
Goddamn, what a performance, what a knockout. This was shocking for me, to be honest. Of all the ways I could have saw this going, just a one-sided ass beating was not in the cards for me at all. Yeah, I just really thought on tape that Sadiq was just the technically superior fighter on the feet, man. And sometimes that shit just doesn't matter. Like literally, like you said, you game plan it properly, you figure out tendencies, and you fight to those advantages. And man, you love to see. I mean, I can't wait to talk about that in other matchups in this card too, because there was a lot of instances of that specifically, especially coming up soon. So excited to touch on that more. But yeah, man, not really much to say besides like love the way he took advantage after, and he's like, he told Dana as he's walking over, he's like, I'm gonna come over there and I'm gonna talk to you. Like, I'm don't get mad. Like, he told him before he did it, and then went out there and spoke with him. I think big things are coming for him in the future, and I won't be surprised if they do end up making that Movsar Evloev rematch, just because obviously he called for it, and we don't really have a firm idea of what's next for Movsar either. So what's going on, Sean?
I have to say, I think I was going to say Mofsar, I think, is definitely a rematch in the making, but I wanted to ask you, because I'm looking at the rankings now and I'm seeing Diego at 14, Sadiq at 15. What would you say to Diego Lopez fighting number 11 and Bryce Mitchell next? How would you, if I'm just, that's just what I think would be next for him. I think two guys who are fan
What the fuck you
favorites.
trying to kill Bryce Mitchell for? What did Bryce Mitchell do
I'm
to
not
you?
trying to kill nobody. I think two fan favorites here who are incredible in the grapple and the submission game. two of them squaring off, I think that'd be a hell of a fight because I think whoever wins that one, you could set them up for someone like Movsar, whatever his timeline might be, because I think that getting Movsar now, who's 5, is a little too soon. So I think getting him one more and thinking of that one more, I think Bryce Mitchell would be great, and that's why I want to ask you if that fight were to be made, which sometimes I predict fights because I'm a guru in this thing. Nostradamus, call me. How would
No
you?
Strashanstas.
There you go. How would you see that fight going if that were made real quick?
Between him and Bryce or between him and Movsar?
No, not Movsar yet. Against Bryce.
Yeah, so that's a good shout. Honestly, the reason why I'm like, hey, why are you trying to kill this man? Because yes, rankings are rankings. I agree with that. But the guy just got sent to hell by Josh Emmett. Like, let's not do that. Like, give him honestly, bro, let's give him somebody like Aljamain Sterling. Let's give him someone that we know isn't gonna go out there and try to fucking knock his head off. Like, I think he deserves an opportunity to show his game a little bit more. Um, but I would obviously be 100% favoring Diego Lopez in that fight. And honestly, just looking at skill sets and the way he jumps off the paper, I think he's fighting way above his ranking. Like, I think he should be considered to be a top 5 fighter even though he's ranked 14 right now. I just think this is such a stacked weight class, and there's so many established names that it's hard to kind of push people down. So, I think after this, I won't be surprised if we see a couple fight cards happen, some other people fight, and he just ends up inching up towards that top 5 by himself, like without even fighting again. I won't be surprised if by the time we see him fight again, he's like ranked 9 or something like that. But all things considered, would love to see the Mofsar rematch, and I think he is definitely competitive there. I mean, he was competitive on short notice, so why the fuck not? And honestly, this is what momentum in the UFC does for you. Like, if you can make moments like this compared to Movsar Evloev, who's been fucking dominant and winning all his fights, but hasn't been creating moments, they're willing to make things like this happen at your expense because hey, you're not doing us any fucking favors, and look what this guy is doing. Like, and I get it. Like, reward you 100% reward guys for fighting like that. But I don't know, man. It's two schools of thought, right? One of them is, hey, you wanna fight to your advantages and make sure you're taking full advantage of your skill set, but at the same time, it's like, man, if you could make some chaos and change some shit up, we've seen so many different fighters just have a run that just changes the way you think about the sport. And he could be one of those guys, to be honest. I would love to see him in a title fight someday. And hopefully we get there. But next up, we've got Kayla Harrison getting a second round rear naked choke against Holly Holm. This obviously Sean's main event. Got to see the ass kicking he deserved. This one kind of felt bad, right? Like, am I the only one that felt this way? This didn't really feel like a fight. Like
I didn't feel bad.
this was more dominant than Bo Nichols' fight. Like, this
Oh
was
yeah.
a ass whooping in a way that it really made you feel like they weren't peers out there at all.
Mhm.
Kayla Harrison looked amazing at 35, made the weight smoothly, and didn't really look as drawn out as I thought she would, to be honest. Um, but she definitely looked a different color. Like, she looked fucking sick on the scale.
Yeah.
So interested that she made it, and obviously she's still talking about cutting again, and she seems like she would want is just gung ho at competing at bantamweight from now on, which is great. I'm sure it focused in her training in a lot of different ways in order to make this weight. That definitely gave her another solid push. But pump the brakes on trying to fight someone like Amanda Nunes, in my opinion. I think, especially with that weight cut still being a question in some ways, fighting someone with that kind of punching power at this stage just seems like a bad idea. But everybody else in this weight class, honestly, I think she beats like for
Yep.
relatively easy too. So it's a little bit weird because it's almost like the fact that Amanda Nunes made that post kind of forces the UFC's hand here because I feel like the UFC knows that they have someone special and that if they put him in there with anyone, that she's probably gonna win. So it's kind of like, damn, like, do we take advantage of this super fight while we can, or do we explore this on the other side? I don't know. I would love to see Kayla Harrison fight her way through this division, though. Like, I think there's a lot of established names that she can fight that would be a fresh matchup. that could really bring some life back into this division. This is the perfect sort of contender to do that, in my opinion. This is exactly what women's bantamweight needed. So, God damn it, we have a savior. But all things considered, man, I think phenomenal debut against a really established OG in this game and made it look fucking easy. How'd you like this one, Sean?
It made it look easy to the point where I was so happy for those whatever it was 7-8 minutes of that fight. It's just, and I have nothing against Holly Holm, even though it does sound like I'm a professional hater. I do respect Holly Holm and her career. I just was so tired of seeing her in this spotlight of these constant main events every single time she's a fight night main event. I don't need to see you as a main event anymore. You you had the championship once, and you haven't had it since Ronda was still a thing. And even though Ronda's trying to make herself a thing with this whole, oh, I had the concussion, I had this, everything was wrong with me. It's not, she didn't really win. I'll talk about Ronda a different time. But in this fight, I felt that it was so amazing how it looked like Holly and her team had prepared so much for the clinch and the takedown and the wrestling and the, just everything involved. And it just, Kayla was so much stronger than I think she even expected. And the fact that Holly reversed her, I think, if I remember correctly, it was she reversed, Kayla reversed Holly, and then Holly reversed her. And it almost seemed like, all right, like, obviously you saw that, you're prepared. But it was like, that was like the highest moment for Holly Holm in that fight. Because it just felt like as soon as Kayla took her down, and especially I think it was the first time she took her down in the first round, I don't think Holly got back up. And even though she stuffed the first attempt, it was almost like you had to wait to the end of the round for Holly to come back. And in that second round, once she was taken down the second time, it was only a matter of time. And that's what we ended up getting. It was such a one-sided fight for what I had expected. And I have to give Harrison all the credit in the world. But my issue isn't, I'm saying this again, I don't want to see, and I think it's going to happen, but I don't want to see Kayla fight for the title next. I don't. I think you want to, as much as there's a super fight and come in with potentially with Amanda Nunes and all that, and you want to kind of rush that, or you want to get Amanda back into a camp or whatever that'll take. I'm telling you, you gotta be able to, like, Kayla beat the number one contender, whoever that may be at that time, and then fight Raquel. I think either way she's going to win. I think she'll be champion at the end of the year. But I do want to see her continuously cut this sort of weight, be able to handle this sort of weight and this weight class, and just kind of go through them before you just throw her to the greatest women's fighter of all time in 2 or 3 fights from now. So as much as Kayla dominated Holly Holm, but let's not forget that Holly Holm is no longer in her peak. She's 40 years old. Yes, Hall of Famer, boxing Hall of Famer. I'll give that to her. She's former champion. I'm not taking any. She greatest upset, arguably in UFC history, top 3 at least. I commend her in her career, but Kayla coming in, she wants that belt. I think she's still got her prime still left in her. I think they want to do one more fight before giving her Raquel, or whoever the champion will be at that time. Who the hell knows? But I think it'll force Amanda to come back. I think it makes this division a little bit more exciting as the prospects are still coming up. And fantastic win. I'm excited to see what's next. I just hope it's not a title fight yet.
Could not have said it better myself. Next up, we got the worst fight on UFC 300. And honestly, I didn't think it was too bad. I really did not. I led the dance on the last one, so why don't you take advantage for this featherweight matchup? Aljamain Sterling defeats Calvin Kattar via unanimous decision, and there was not a doubt in that whole building about who won that fight. Was there, Sean?
No, you know what? It was as much as of a snoozer as this kind of was. I give full on props to Aljamain here, man. He completely shut down Calvin Kattar. I've never seen Calvin this frozen in my entire life. Like, he is always been a high level striker. who could piece up anybody at any given moment. He's had incredible fights against Max Holloway and his losses against what the heck is his name in Giga.
Mhm.
I can't in his last
Chikadze.
win.
Chikadze.
Yeah, Chikadze. Thank you. And like we've seen him at his very best and his very worst, but he's still a striker through in, through out. Like, it doesn't matter. And in this fight, man, he just looked completely frozen. Like, Aljamain absolutely, like, perfectly fit this weight class. He looked great. He looked physically perfect for this weight class. He almost looked like he was big, like a big bantamweight. Featherweight in this one. Like, he looked incredible for in shape, and he just absolutely shut down Calvin. Yeah, it was a snoozer. Like, you really didn't see what you wanted to see in this fight. But man, I give Sterling all the credit in the world here. He shut down one of the top tier strikers in that division, and I almost wonder what could be next for Kattar more than what I think of what's next for Sterling, because I think Sterling is 8 or 9 now in this division, but you know I look at it as he's 8 now, so he can fight any of those top guys, and I think he's got a legitimate shot. While for someone like Kattar, I don't know what happens. Like, I've never seen Kattar look like that and be so lost and just have no answer for anything Aljamain was throwing at him. And it was kind of like the Leon Edwards Kamaru Usman fight, where you had the announcers just literally writing his obituary halfway through the fight. So it was something I never thought I would see from Calvin, and I hope he bounces back quickly from it. And all the props in the world to Aljamain Sterling.
Great shouts, man. I think there was a level of danger in the preview show that we talked about that never really came to fruition in this fight, right? I agree. I think it's tough, all things considered, right? He's coming off of a knee injury in his last fight against Arnold Allen, and then going straight in against a pure grappler like that. Like, he was set up in a lot of ways to look terrible. So respect for going out there and doing the damn thing. I think ultimately Aljamain Sterling deserves a little bit more credit though, as far as how we look at this fight. I think a lot of people are just like, "Oh, this fight was boring. It sucks. So fuck that guy." And in my opinion, you're just taking away the reality of the situation. I think he looked phenomenal because of what he was able to accomplish, not because Calvin Kattar is just 100% washed. I think there is some deserved criticism and deserved speculation about where Calvin Kattar could go in the future. But I think at the same time, some respect is really owed to Aljamain Sterling as far as what he was able to do in the ease of getting those takedowns, the methodology, right? Getting not getting to his signature backpack position really, but getting to dominant positions consistently just by staying on top of him and smothering him. I thought this was a really good performance where he really showed um, obviously his upper bound limits at featherweight, but also the ability to control someone that's much larger than him. Like, he answered all the questions we could have possibly had, and it's just unfortunate because people just don't appreciate grapplers, man. We could just be honest about it. Like you said, there was a lot of times on this card where the crowd is almost arguing, like like they're mad, and then like a perfect example in another fight that we'll be talking about relatively soon, Bo Nichols fight. They booed him when he shot for a takedown on Brundage, but then when he got the submission, they're cheering. So like, how the fuck you think we're gonna get there, brother? So we gotta. You don't just jump. You don't, unless you're Aljamain Sterling. You don't just jump someone's back right away. Like, there's levels to the shit, and you need to get there. And I think ultimately Aljo showed that he can do that at this division, which is all that was asked of him. And to do it like that, where he didn't look vulnerable, he didn't look like he had to overcome really anything, because he was just so dominant and out ahead of Calvin Kattar. So to do that against someone that we know is notoriously just fucking gritty, and willing to do whatever he has to do out there to get the win. I think this is an amazing win for Aljamain, even though it was the probably the most talked about as far as being a bad fight on this card. Next up, the bonus winner, Yuri Prochazka, defeats Aleksandar Rakic via round 2 TKO. I'm convinced that the reason why I love this man is because he is Tony Ferguson incarnate. This is Tony Ferguson 2.0. This is, we are only gonna win because, god damn it, I believe it more than you. Do you understand me? I believe that I've got it more than you, and I fucking bring that to bear in these fights. God damn it. Yuri had nothing for this man in the first round. Literally nothing. I was like, wow, Rakic looks phenomenal. He was really getting anything he wanted, able to keep him at range, and then whenever he was coming in, he was landing clean shots. Like I felt like, man, this was dread time. This felt like, ah, man, my guy actually might be set up to lose here. And then once he got him, man, it just was all pedal to the metal until he got the finish from there. I love watching me a Yuri Prochazka fight because once again, you know what you're in for, man. This guy is willing to absorb damage to spite you, to make you feel like, damn, this motherfucker's still here. Like I'm legitimately convinced the way he is, his code, his ethics, this is the reincarnation of Tony Ferguson. And this is why I love this man so much, because the skills might not jump out on paper to you, but god damn it, he's gonna take you into the ocean and find out who can swim more, because he's willing to take more than you are willing to engage in order to land those strikes on him. It's fucking insane. Like, it is literally legitimately insane, and it kind of does change your perspective on what a fighter is able to endure when you see a comeback like this. And it's like, god damn, like, he had, once again, he had nothing and then he had everything. Like, how does that happen? Phenomenal fight. This is in the running for fight of the night until we got the fight of the night, right? Let's just be honest, and we'll get there when we get there. But this was an awesome fight, really reminiscent of just a, like I said, just a barn burner, two-sided, tale of two rounds kind of fight. We see one round play out exactly one way, and then the other one just flip entirely on its head. Fucking love me some Yuri Prochazka, man. How'd you feel about this 205 matchup?
Honestly, I thought it was as much as I loved Yuri's comeback, man. I got to give Rakic all the credit in the world, man. He looked fantastic from in the beginning, coming back from the injuries. You know, he looked strong as ever. The way he abused Yuri's legs from the start, you know, was landing those combinations, but just absolutely piecing up that leg. And it's just like I felt like I was saying this in the preview fight where Yuri just lets his legs just get absolutely brutalized. And I remember you coming back and was like, that's just Yuri. You know, Yuri's just so random and so uncomfortable. Like he can look like he's hurt, but he's just dancing around doing stuff. And it kind of showed like Yuri was taking those kicks, and as much of a poker face as he was trying to like hold there, you could tell like his fucking leg was turning purple 3 seconds after getting kicked. And even when Rakic was landing the combinations and even the like partial head kick, like I was really worried about Yuri. It almost looked like Yuri had lost a step from losing to Pereira. He hadn't land, as the train goes by, hadn't land a significant shot for like the first minute and a half of the fight. And I once you saw Yuri starting to bleed, I think it was under his right eye, you really started to see Rakic start to pick him apart even more. Like you just saw how much of a dominant one-sided fight that first round was from Rakic. And even when I think it was Yuri like nailed him like really strong in the I'm pretty sure I think it was like 4 minutes into the round. And like that kind of got Rakic's attention, but still in that moment I felt like the momentum had swung so much that it felt like Yuri was kind of desperate. And then even entering the second round, Rakic came in, was so dominant with the legs again. And, I give all the credit in the world for Yuri and his comeback, but I was really excited for Rakic in this one, for coming back from all that time off, all the injuries. I'm excited for what he's got next. I want to see who he fights. And I think you could put him against Jan Blachowicz because that was what it was supposed to be before all this happened with 300 and all that. I think you could put that fight again. And I would love to see Rakic come back, man. He was an up-and-coming guy before the injuries. I was really excited for what his future held. Obviously, injuries have slowed him down. But that's just kind of how this division has been. So many champions have relinquished the belts from injuries. Rakic, up-and-coming number one contender, injured, But I would not be surprised if we see Rakic against, Pereira in the future someday. Not in the next one or two fights, but definitely in the future because – I like Rakic's potential from that fight, even though he lost, from a former champion. I think his future is just as bright as Yuri's.
I love that. And it's my two matchups for this. Give me Yuri Blahovic. I don't think that's what you were saying, but that's what I would rather see just because they haven't fought yet. And where they are in the division, I think that whoever wins that is kind of deserving of a title shot despite that. Um, but I think Rakic versus Jamal Hill is a fucking hell of a fight, man. I agree with everything you said. Rakic looked phenomenal, and it kind of sucks that I didn't get to mention that just because obviously you're so excited about what Yuri did. But yeah, man, I think that's a guy I would like to have on my dynasty team just because the skills pay the bills, and it's clear he's working on them for sure.
I think it
Next,
would
oh
be Yuri versus Jamal first, don't you think?
no, no,
Really? Okay.
no. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Blahovic lost last to Pereira.
Mhm.
And the reason why I think of all this framework is because once again, look how good Rakic looked. And who was the last person to beat Rakic? Blahovic. And that's
But you
what got
had
him that fight against Pereira.
the two guys who became champions based and lost it due to injury. You would think that the guy Glover was like the glue to both of those guys, not fighting each other. So you would think that them fighting each other would be what's next. Now that Pereira's already gotten the revenge on both those guys. Those two guys are going to have to establish who's the number one contender for if they do have a rematch one day. And I think that would be the fight to make. And I think I don't even remember if Rakic just faced Jan before, but I think that fight would probably happen because I don't know what Jan Blachowicz is up to these days, but I would have to assume he's trying to crack the top two, top three right now.
Yeah, that's a great matchup too. I just don't like it just because you just came off such a big knockout win and now you're gonna fight someone who just got knocked out in the first round. Like to me, it just doesn't really make sense considering the way Hill looked. And hey, this is someone who picked Jamal Hill to win in the main event. I don't even know if you know that because those
I
videos
did
went
know that.
out and we recorded separate. But yeah, I fully went into that fight thinking he was gonna win, and just seeing the way he fought, man, I don't think you can match these two guys up after that, in my opinion. But would love to see what the UFC does. Next up, we've got Bo Nickals. Shout out to my mom calling him Bo Nickals, and I was dying for the rest of the night. He was Bo Nickals, brother. Defeating Cody Brundage via second round rear naked choke. Give us your thoughts, brother.
Honestly, I thought this was a great fight, for as long as it lasted. We all knew Bo would eventually get Cody, and I said this in the preview fight that Cody, out of all the fighters that were on 300, his name meant the least when it came to value. And the fact that he was on the main card of 300 is something he'll tell everybody for the rest of his life. It was a big moment for him to face someone so up and coming like Bo Nickal. Obviously, very little MMA fights, and I give Bo Nickal a lot of credit. I was a little angry with the fact that he was so angry with himself because you can't honestly demand or think that you're going to be first round sub every time. You're facing guys who are now fighting. In the beginning, yeah, I get it. You just fought Val, whatever, a couple fights ago. A dude stepped in like 24-hour notice. Yeah, you beat the brakes off of him. Good for you. Love that. That was great. It helped your career that you're not just a
Just
sub
got
guy.
cut today. If I'm not
Yeah, and great shout. Like the fact that he up and coming guy, great. He was really in the Dana White Contender Series, and yes, showed your hands that you're not just a sub guy. You can use your hands. But Cody Brundage, we just talked about how he had that great freaking power slam or whatever the frick it was against Zach Reese. Like he was on the up and up. Like he had won two straight. He was trying to shock the world here. This wasn't no bump, no tuna can here that I expected, like the first round sub within the first 2 minutes. Man, Cody held his own for someone also with a wrestling background. So, I give a lot of credit to Cody Brundage in this one, and this only helped his stock, even in the loss. And the fact he brought it to round two, and it was a pretty close fight. As much as you could have thought for someone as Bo should have dominated, it's good for Bo. And I think this is another great little step up from Bo. I think, and even he said it in his fight in his little mic time with Joe Rogan that he's still like 6-7 fights away from being a champion, and he knows that he's still got a long ways to go. So accept that victory. You're not gonna get subs every single time. Like if you do, amazing. You're one of the greatest of all time already. If you're getting 11 straight subs to start your career, but I think you got to take the wins that you got. You could take. Sometimes you're gonna get punched in the mouth, and you're not gonna be Mr. Perfect. And I thought that was a great step up in competition for him. And I'm excited to see who they give him next, because I would love to see how he rebounds from thinking like I can beat these guys in 3 minutes, and now I'm beating these guys in 8 minutes. Okay, now it's like you progress the level here. So now I want to see what's next for him, and I'm excited to see what Cody's bringing, in his next fight, because he looked pretty good for those 8 minutes that he was in there. And props to him for being on UFC 300, for taking this fight. He probably made a good bag doing it, and I'm excited for what he's got in the unranks.
I'm gonna be honest. I disagree with you a little bit. I think this fight was disappointing from both of these guys. Obviously, you needed a certain level of oomph when you're put on the main card and you're put in this irresponsible position, if you ask me, by the UFC. Like I think they bit off more than they could chew versus Bo Nickel biting off more than he could chew. I think I didn't like this as far as his progression. And hear me out. I think, given the way his last fight went, I would love to see him be a little bit more comfortable on the feet. To me, it just felt like he was so one track minded with what he needed to do. And don't get me wrong, in certain matchups, right? Let's say he's fighting Izzy one day. I would love to see you fight like that. Like please fight like that. But in a fight like this, where you're fighting another grappler, you would think, get some reps, feel how it feels out there, and see if this is some like a path for you to actually be legitimately good in. At this stage, I'm not sure that that's the case, just because he looked a little desperate out there as far as pursuing the takedown and pursuing that phase of the fight. I think obviously phenomenal win, still looked like the favorite he was, right? Like I don't want to shit on this performance and make it seem like this was a bad performance. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's a phenomenal win. And like you said, against someone that's better than Jamie Pickett, right? He's better than Jamie, god damn it. But ultimately, I think Cody Brundage could have did more to offer resistance here, as far as, like I said, in the exchanges, in the moments before we got to the grappling. Obviously he extended him to the second round, but I don't really think that's a moral victory you take when you didn't really land a glove on him, right? You didn't put him in a spot where you needed to, where the line started moving a little bit in your favor. Like that didn't happen at all. So shout to Bo Nickel, went through adversity in the way that he didn't just crumble, right? Like I think he's just been used to people just crumbling out there, and he didn't get to feel that this time. So I agree. It's good to work through those things, especially at this stage of your career. But I just hate what he's doing as far as being pedal to the metal about his development. Like when Ilya Taporia was beating Yusuff Zalal, imagine he after that fight is calling for a Hamzat Chimaev level of opponent. Like it just doesn't make sense for what you where you are in your career and where what you should be trying to accomplish right now. Like I just think he is still so green, that the UFC really disadvantaged him by putting him in this position, because he could have had this exact same outcome right after the Bobby Green fight, and we would have looked at that like holy shit, Bo fucking Nickel. But because it was on the main card and the expectations were so through the roof, we end up with the sour taste for what should be otherwise a very dominant win. So just an impossible situation for Bo Nickel to be in. I would love to see his next fight, no matter where it is, no matter what card it's on. But just mismanagement by the UFC, if you ask me. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
I do agree with what you said there. I didn't think much of it. The fact of putting him on the main, and then it was a little UFC bit off more than they could chew sort of aspect. I do agree with that. I do think that that was the case there. But I still believe that he's gonna be a star, or the UFC is gonna do everything they can to make him one. And he was already on main cards before this, and I feel like they're trying to make him a star so much that putting him on a prelim for free is not what they want to do anymore. So I don't think we'll ever, never again in his career will we ever see him on a prelim ever unless his career, toilets and he loses 2 or 3 in a row, and then all of a sudden they're trying to get him to bounce back. But I think he's always going to be one of the biggest names, if not the biggest prospects in all of UFC right now. So if you have, this is like in any sport, the number one prospect in that sport coming up. You want all the lights. You want this on prime time television. You want this on everybody can see. And I think that's why they did it. He's the number one prospect in probably the UFC. Kayla Harrison could be number two, obviously, but she's not even really a prospect to what we've seen from her in other venues. So, but Bo is so, green as grass in this sport, and seeing him climb through the unranks, beating these guys with such little MMA experience. Obviously, the UFC made that on purpose, but I think that's why they're doing him. That's why you put him on the main, is because someone like Cody Brundage, who has 30 fights to his name, and someone like Bo Nickal, who on paper, Bo Nickal can destroy Cody Brundage, but no one's going to play that factor into Cody's been doing this for 30 fights and probably so many other amateur fights. So I thought it was good. I thought it was a nice step up, because there's going to come a time where let's say he did beat Cody Brundage in the first round, there's going to come a fight where you think you're going to roll right through this guy in the first round, and all of a sudden you're cracked, and you're taking, you're in the deep waters of the third or fourth or fifth round, or you might lose that fight. I felt like that's kind of how we saw it with Rosas Jr., where he was supposed to come in and just dominate. Oh, look at this 18-year-old kid. He's so good. And then all of a sudden he gets put up. I forget his name, of course, because I was Christian something. Rodriguez.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. And all of a sudden he loses because he's like nowhere to be found. He's so, in the whole UFC world is lost. Oh my God, I can't believe he lost Christian Rodriguez. So I think they're trying to right that wrong too. And I think that's why I love that it went to the second round. I love that Bo Nickal had more time in the octagon. I love that he faced some adversity. He got cracked a little bit in the first round. That's what I wanted to see. And, I don't think that that's going to happen every time. I do expect some first round subs later on, but I was happy with UFC 300 to show that he isn't just this first round sub robot guy. He is human. He's not perfect yet in this sport, and I'm excited for what happens with him next.
I love it. I just feel like, to close this conversation, it's really about the card more than it is about the opportunity. Like, I get it. You're trying to force feed him, like you said. You're trying to create this star. I understand. I think you could have achieved that on the prelims here. And I think that would have made the audience much more receptive to this fight. Like, if this fight happened in the prelims versus right after fucking Yuri versus Rakic, I think the crowd would have popped way more. I think it would have been more of a star moment than it really came off as in the moment, because of how big the card was. Like, and that isn't a Bo Nickal problem. Like, that, once again, that's a UFC problem. I can't imagine, through Conor McGregor's reign, right? Let's talk about, we're trying to create a star here. I don't think early on in his run, regardless of what opportunities he was giving him Brandao as the main event, right? Like, that was a winnable fight in the main event. I get it. That's the full card is built around you. But at that point, you've already established yourself as someone that is now not only not green, but established in the company, right? He already at that point fought multiple times and gotten multiple finishes. Like, this is your third fight on the main card of the biggest card ever. And it delivered as the biggest card ever. If honestly, it's just, they made him look worse than he looks. Like, he does not look bad. I'm not criticizing the performance necessarily. It's just a weird mismanagement, in my opinion, by the UFC. But we'll stop bitching. Next up, we got Arman Tsarukyan gets the win against Charles Oliveira via split decision. Another split that I did not agree with. I thought this one was very unanimous by Arman Tsarukyan. I really, I love this fight because it was so high level. But I feel like this fight definitely kind of sucked the wind out of the room a little bit. Um, I wish this fight was 5 rounds. I feel like we would have had a better idea of where these guys match up with each other if we got this in a 5 round fight, but you couldn't, right? With 3 title fights, it makes sense why it was 3 rounds. I just feel like we got robbed of the fight we deserved to see. I mean, obviously, we Charles Oliveira finishing the fight in that Darce, and then everyone's freaking out. Oh my God, he fell asleep. No, clearly he was working to defend the choke. But once again, you only know those things if you have been, right? If you've been in there. Um, I think ultimately weird circumstances with him punching a fan on the way to the crowd, right? Like he's a fucking intense dude, which you like in a competitor, especially in a combat sport. But just fucking pump the brakes a little bit, bro. Like fucking relax. No need to give yourselves any added distractions before you're about to fight a world champion out there. But all things considered, man, thought he looked phenomenal out there. I thought he did the deed and clearly won 2 rounds in my opinion. I think Charles Oliveira just never really got a chance to get going. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this may sound weird. I haven't gotten a chance to really watch back this fight. I feel like I remember this fight the least out of all of them. Like I feel like this fight really, and that makes once again that's probably just because what Max Holloway was able to accomplish, right, and what kind of moment that was. Um, but to me, this definitely did feel like the biggest undersold moment because as far as what this moment means for Arman, no matter what, in my opinion, his next fight should be for a title, and I don't want to hear anything else. And it sucks that we never got to see Charles get another title shot, all things considered.
I'm gonna ask you at the end, but to give my recap quick, I understand why it was split. I did think Arman won uh, the fight. I thought it was gonna be UD, but I understood it because if you looked at round one and you saw the guillotine attempt and how deep that was in the first round, and everyone in some there are some judges who take in big moments in rounds to be like, oh, he won that round. Oh, like that. Oh, he had the guillotine attempt. Oh, okay. It doesn't matter what happens from there, because obviously, I thought even still, I thought Arman won the first round because of flipping it, getting Charles on his back, landing those nasty elbows, opening him up. He pieced up Charles early, and he was more dominant early. But it was because of that guillotine. I think that's why the judge definitely gave Charles that first round. Second round, I thought it was all Arman there. It just seemed it was kind of weird to see Charles so like not held back, I guess. It felt like Charles was kind of restrained on what he was trying to do. It definitely took the air out of the arena, and I think all of us that in this main card fight, but I definitely wish it was 5 rounds. And I hate seeing former champions get 3 round fights because it's just we've seen him, especially a decorated one like he's been beating the top contenders that he has beaten, and then all of a sudden he's a 3 round fighter. Like I hate that so much. It's like when I was telling you at Hamza versus Kamaru Usman, seeing a 3 round fight. It's like it's not the justice that we deserve for someone like we've seen with Kamaru, who's had like 11 in a row at 5 rounds. Like I don't want to see a 3 round fight. It's so different. So much can change. And then obviously we see in the third round this fight, Oliveira and Tsarukyan, they're having a great back and forth. And then obviously Charles gets another sub, and you're almost thinking like he's got him, even though I thought Arman, survived it well. But still, like if that went to a fourth or fifth round, who the hell knows how Arman would recover from another deep submission attempt. So I think it's tough to see, but I don't think this hurts. I think this helps Arman a lot, obviously becoming basically the number one contender. If he is now, I don't know. Um, and then Charles, I hope, can rebound from it. But this is what I wanted to ask you. This is a tough question, and I'm going to let you answer this quickly. Charles Oliveira, where he is now in 2024, do you think we've seen the best of him? Is the best of Charles Oliveira in the past? Do you think he could be a champion again, or do you think this is the slow progression towards the end of Charles Oliveira at the top?
It's a good question, man. I think this is not the end. I think we saw very competitive in this fight, finished the fight arguably in a fight ending submission, right? Like I think this isn't the end of his career. I think honestly, the majority of the people that are in 155 that are a little older and that have been around more, I feel like he's gonna stay around longer than all those guys. Like the Gaethjes of the world, all the like. I feel like he's gonna be around for longer than all those guys. I just feel like he's still in his prime and in his peak. And honestly, I won't be surprised if we do see him get another title fight down the road in a similar situation as Poirier, right? Where you took an L against a top contender. It is what it is. But let's give you a little bit of a step back, and if you're able to overcome that, fuck it, you might have a slot because that's just kind of how this division is right now. It's really hard to establish yourself as a contender and get that fight. Like the fact that we didn't get Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev because Charles Oliveira wanted to fight earlier, like that, in my opinion, is where the UFC sucks as a fan because there's not enough title shots to go around in the good divisions. And then in the bad divisions, there's too many fucking title shots being handed out to people that just don't deserve it. So kind of sucks that Charles Oliveira was put into this position. Once again, speaks to the kind of badass that he is. And honestly, there was some talk of him maybe potentially fighting Max Holloway in the future for the BMF title after this one. And I think that is something that I would like to see too, because he is that kind of fighter. Once again, I didn't believe in the Charles Oliveira experience. I remember when he had that resurgence, right? Knocking out people like why am I forgetting his name? David Tamor. I remember after that performance being like, wow, this guy is something special at 155. And um, before that, thinking quite the opposite, right? This guy isn't reliable. This guy isn't consistent. This guy isn't a professional. Like all of these things were slandered about Charles Oliveira and the way he's come out on top in his career. I won't doubt this man ever again. Um, but there is a question, right, about whether or not the championship aspirations are still there. The reason why I say that is because I feel like there is something in the water, man. I think Arman Tsarukyan has a good shot to dethrone Makachev, and that makes things interesting. So once again, the quality of who you lost to, and the rest of the division, I think Charles Oliveira is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, I think so too. I just wanted to see because I've seen people on social media say that this is the end of Charles, and I don't think that at all. I think we're 1 to 2 fights away from having Gaethje and Poirier, at the end. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows how Gaethje recovers? And this is what I wanted to talk about in the next fight, and I will with him. But Poirier, obviously we know about his announcement against Islam. He loses that fight. I really don't see him continuing after that. I think that he could be done as well
Straight off the
after that.
title shot. You think
Yeah,
so?
I think so because
Wow.
at that point you go 0 for 3 in title fights. He's already been hinting at retirement that he didn't want. He knew he didn't have much left in him after this, and I think if he goes to the top, like he's getting a gift. Obviously, leapfrogging a lot of these guys because of timeline. It was perfect for him. If he loses to Islam, I really just don't see him going like, all right, let me do it again. Let me climb the ranks one more time. Like, I don't think he's going to want to do 3 more fights before
Did
he
he
gets
have to
title shot.
climb the ranks for this one?
No, but this worked out perfectly for him. And he was kind of stuck. He took that Benoit Saint Denis fight. Remember, and that whole thing he didn't want to do that. He made it public that he didn't want to fight someone below him. Why am I fighting a prospect? I don't want to fight Benoit. But then he ended up taking it because there was nothing left for him. And then he turned it into, I can make this a positive. If I beat the brakes off Benoit, make this a crazy ass knockout, all of a sudden I'm talked about. Holy shit, look at this. I line up perfectly with Islam's next fight in June. I want that. You know what? Let me take Benoit. Let me beat the shit out of him, this up and coming guy. And then all of a sudden, I can have freaking Ali pretend to be Islam on Twitter and tweet at me a bunch of times. And then all of a sudden, I get a title fight because Ali's probably going to ask for it 100 times. So it worked out perfect for Dustin. And I'm happy for Dustin in that regard that he gets one more final attempt at trying to claim the throne. Do I think he's going to win? No, but we'll get to that. But I think after that, he will retire. And then who the hell knows with Gaethje? He just lost his chance at fighting Islam. They're not going to give him the title fight now. The fact that he just lost to Holloway, I don't see the UFC being like, all right, you can have Islam now. So who the hell knows what Gaethje wants to do next? So Arman might be next. Those two might retire by the end of the year, because I know Gaethje's been saying that he doesn't have much time left, that he's only doing one more run at the title before he's done. So I think Oliveira, bringing this all the way back, I think Oliveira is still completely fine. I think they're going to make him versus Arman again in the future. I think he'll have, Fiziev and another guy, come in, and he'll fight 2 more guys, and then he'll fight Arman again in a 5-round main event. That's what I think the UFC is going to end up doing with Arman and Charles, because that was a good fight. And I think if that does, I think the UFC and the fans would want to see that go 5 rounds. And eventually, after whatever happens between Arman and Islam, that will be a 5-round main event somewhere, because Charles needs to fight Arman in 5 rounds, I believe. And I still believe in my whole heart that Charles versus Islam 2 needs to happen again. The fact that he was a decorated champion, the bullshit with Gaethje and him losing his belt due to the fucking 0.1 missing on the weight scale. He was a champion, and then to lose to Islam, like, he was a champion enough that he deserved the rematch. So I think Charles is not done. I think he just has a nice little hiccup. But we've seen his career from the jump of him being counted out and being nothing and rising all the way through. So I think Charles is just fine. I think he'll climb up. I think his next fight, whoever it is, will have a tough task ahead of him, as we saw against Dariush. So it'll be fun.
Fun it will be indeed. Next up, fucking generational fight right here. BMF. Max Holloway wins via 5th round buzzer beater KO against Justin Gaethje. You already alluded to this one a little bit. It's your turn, brother. I'm going to lay it out for you.
Perfect.
God damn. How do we even put this thing into words?
Bro, man, I am, besides the knockout, he was winning that fight, I think 4 rounds to 1, and arguably 5 rounds to 0. I think Gaethje did win that 4th round, but I was just so impressed with Holloway the whole fight. This looked, I know people joke about this, like once he shaved his head and went back to the old haircut, like, oh look, he's back, like, oh, it's the old Max. This is why Max wins. If he has that long hair, he's not the same guy. He's a shell of himself.
Why not fade, baby?
Yeah, the why not fade. But dude, the whole fight, man, it just looked like Holloway was just like a clear step ahead of him. Like the body shots, the hooks to the body, the hooks to what the hell was it? I think it was the left hook to start. Even with Gaethje swinging heavy in the beginning, he couldn't connect on Max right away. The one thing I'll give Gaethje from rip that I was really concerned about, and I even said it on the preview show, was the freaking leg kicks, man. I got to give Max a lot of credit for the freaking poker face he put on, because his whole leg was a bubble. I after that 2nd round, I was really concerned about Max, and he even switched stances a couple times in round 3. I was really concerned about what he might look like going into round 4 and 5, but Max was the whole time was just always a step ahead of Justin. You could clearly tell. And obviously we saw with that, 2 seconds left in that 1st round, that spinning heel kick that just perfectly landed right on the nose. As I saw that, I thought holy shit, because they mentioned how Gaethje had this nose surgery and never had his nose broken or whatever the case may have been, and he needed that surgery. But then I thought you could see it from Justin right from the start that he had never been hit like that ever, because he was, his nose is broken and he's trying to blow out his nose, and he's trying to he's trying to breathe again, and he's and you hear it from Trevor, don't do that, don't, he just looks so rattled from that point on, he had never been hit like that, to the point where his nose is all fucked up. He's trying to breathe through his mouth. He's mouth breathing the whole rest of the fight. He looked super slow, he couldn't figure out what Max was going to do next, or he couldn't get close to Max enough without getting pieced up himself. 100%. I'll leave the knockout to you, because you will explain that much better than I will. The fact that the whole point to the thing, and what a fucking badass fucking moment. That's one of the best moments in UFC history. The fact that you're winning that fight, the belt's yours if you want to call it a belt, and you still put everything on the line. 10 seconds to go right here. Let's do this right here. But a lot of people will dance around, and I'll let you take it from there. But I got to give Max 100% credit for this fight. He proved me wrong, so many others wrong. I thought he was going to look small compared to in this lightweight fight, how I saw him against Dustin. But holy shit, man, he looked absolutely incredible. He almost looked like he fit in this weight class, like he's been here from the beginning. And honestly, I'm with the rest of the fans. I'm with Dana White and say whatever he wants next, give it to him. If he wants lightweight, if he wants featherweight, he wants BMF, he wants Connor, I don't give a fuck. You can have it because you deserve it. That's $600K. You deserved it and more. So hell of a fucking fight, hell of a fucking knockout, hell of a fucking performance. Incredible. It was Max Holloway the old, and I hope for the future. He's only 32 years old. He's got so much left in him. Take it away, kid.
God damn. I just love that this man proved me right, right? Like this was my read of the card. This was my 100%. I saw this and I couldn't believe how dominant he was, man, to just be able to control in that way throughout this entire fight. I thought honestly there was moments, especially in round 4 and early round 5, where I kind of felt like, all right, Max, we can't let this get away from us now. Like let's keep the pressure on, because he did kind of ease up a little bit in 4 and 5, and that opened the window for that 4th round for Justin Gaethje to land that, obviously the strike that dropped him. I thought that was a rightful knockdown, and then they took it away. But I thought that was a real knockdown, just because circumstances, you could tell it wasn't a slip. Like it was the punch that caused him to touch earth. But I love this fight. I loved everything about it. You touched on it a little bit, but just controlling with the jab and controlling with the distance, right? Like really forcing Justin Gaethje to earn his spots and to work from the outside. And when you're a bigger fighter like that and you can take advantage of your range, uh, he really just did so well at keeping Gaethje at bay and then punishing him with the tride of strikes. I love the back kicks. Literally every time Justin Gaethje either shelled up or turned over to try to just basically leave the pocket range in a safe way. He does tend to sort of shell up, and in those moments, man, you could tell he was just dialed in, like you were saying earlier about the different matchups and knowing what you're trying to expect out of your fighter. I thought phenomenal job on him and his team to come up with that and then execute and really land that strike multiple times. Obviously, there's a lot of luck involved when you're throwing a back kick to the body and it lands on the nose. Like there's a lot of luck involved there. But the fact that he got that, didn't get greedy, right? Hurt him early. Justin Gaethje almost fucking flew out the cage after that strike landed. Literally, it was kind of crazy. Um, I just love this performance all around. And then, like you said, just being able to dominate really, like until that 4th round, even though Gaethje was landing leg kicks, nothing ever felt like it changed the complexion of the fight, right? There was never that Adesanya Pereira moment where you see Adesanya wobble from the leg kicks and now Pereira's on him. Like I felt like that's what, as a crowd, everyone expected this fight to be, right? That we were gonna get that moment where, yeah, we know Max Holloway could keep him at bay, but eventually Gaethje's gonna get to him, and Gaethje didn't get to him, man. Just phenomenal fight IQ out there, and that was what I was banking on, man. I was really confident that he would be able to play to his advantages, and that was exactly what he did. But goddamn, that final exchange, man, like you said, just I get it. In my opinion, if there's anyone that needed to do that and should have done that, it was Gaethje. Gaethje was the one that was in that position where he needed that moment. He needed to pressure in order to find himself in a spot to win. And, and Max said, "I don't give a fuck. I'm up, yeah, but fuck it. Like this is what BMFs do." And I just love everything about him. I've been such a big fan of Max Holloway. It's crazy to think about, right? First live event I ever went to was in 2017, and he was on that card. I got to see him choke out Cub Swanson in the Prudential Center, which is where this Makachev Poirier fight is happening. So we need to go. I'm just saying, we need boots on the ground for that Newark card 302. But just seeing his career, seeing him have this second peak now, right? Like this is, once again, speaks to the greatness of Volkanovski. The fact that people wrote Max Holloway off ever, like the fact that he puts his nuts out there on the line every single time, whether it be in the Arnold Allen fight, whether it be in the Yair Rodriguez fight. And people are saying, this guy is washed after those performances. Like, bro, if you're going to get in the water, you're going to get wet. Like, you're going to have to absorb some shots here. And the chin has never wavered and the skills continue to grow. Like, this man deserves all the respect, all the accolades. And fuck, bro, going all out like that in those pocket exchanges to the body and really forcing Gaethje to feel like the head was open and then just coming up top with that hook, fucking amazing, right? Like to find that spot to set him up in that chaos. Like it wasn't just like they were throwing random punches and then he landed some shot that was like the perfect angle. No, like he set up that shot perfectly, and as soon as it landed, it was over because Gaethje didn't see it. Just to have that awareness in those moments, man, for people who have never been in those physical altercations, man, you're gonna be if most people in those scenarios, you're blacking out. You're not there. And goddamn it, Max Holloway is fucking there and ready to make you pay. Phenomenal. There's not enough good things we could say about this. Just all-time great knockout for sure, and just an all-time great fighter, man. I don't care if he loses every fight after this, like BJ Penn. This guy is a all-time great in this sport. I don't care that he has the losses to Volk. This man is really something special, and we got to see that on 300.
I think it worked just absolutely perfect for him because he set himself back up, beating all of the prospects, and I'll keep this quick, beating all the prospects and all the guys coming up in his division to be able to go in and beat Gaethje the way he did, not from just that last second knockout, but the whole fucking 25 minutes he beat Justin Gaethje. I will give Gaethje the fourth round, but still, it just looked like it was Max Holloway's fight to lose after like that first round. It was incredible. So he kind of created his own destiny for him, and because we had been talking about this for a long time, and I think everybody has, of what the hell can Holloway do. He was so stuck at just sitting there at number one. He couldn't fight Volk again. He had nowhere to go, and now it almost feels like, with the fact that Ilya beat Volk, with the fact that he just beat Gaethje, everything is working so perfectly on the timeline. And then you would think like, oh, well, Holloway's probably like 36, 37 at this point. No, he's only fucking 32. He's got so much time left in his career, and he said it. He's got, like, I'm going to be doing this for a long time. Like, he's got no plans whatsoever of even considering retirement. So I think this just opened up so many doors for him. I'm so excited that he could finally escape this freaking gatekeeping at number one of the featherweight division. And I hope he gets that title shot wherever he wants, and I hope he gets the fight he deserves, because he absolutely deserves it. And I'm so excited to see what's next. And I'm happy for him, and I'm super depressed for what happened with Justin Gaethje.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm gonna be honest. There's a world where we get this rematch and Gaethje wins. Like, I think that spinning back kick really had a bigger effect than people like to admit. I
100%.
think it changed the complexion of the fight fully. We
Yep.
never really got to see Gaethje pressure. Um, so there's a world where we see this fight again and it looks different. But definitely, I feel all the praise is deserved for Max Holloway. I would love to see. I know we talked about this guys briefly and how you think he might retire. I think we do not hear either Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier retire until we get that third fight. So honestly, I think with all things considered, that might be what's next. If obviously he doesn't win the title, so something to consider there.
You're right. I do agree with that. I think with both of them, if they both, now that Justin probably lost his shot at Islam for the time being, Dustin loses, I think the UFC would make that. You're right, 100%. And then I think that could be the end of either one of them. But I agree with you there.
Yes, sir. Next up, we've got our co-main event, the first title fight of the night. We had Weili Zhang defending her title via unanimous decision against Yan Xiaonan, retaining that belt once again, baby. Um, this was an awesome fight, and honestly, a fight that when I was watching it live felt way closer than when I watched it again. Like I watched it again before this. Um, awesome fight from Weili Zhang. I think it's evident though that if for whatever reason, because once again, I think she got bailed by the ref on multiple occasions, but if for whatever reason Weili Zhang cannot get these girls out of there early, I think you really got to watch that gas tank, right? There was moments later on in this fight where Xionan, credit to her, she stood tough after getting submitted after round one, after almost getting knocked out in round two, and was live in round three and four, and was really putting together some good combinations and strikes on the feet. Ultimately, I think when it comes to Weili Zhang, I think if she's not able to finish these women early in these fights for whatever circumstance, whether it's the ref bailing her out or whether it's just they're able to survive through these different methods, I think later on in these fights is when Zhang definitely becomes more vulnerable. I thought Yan Xiaonan really did a good job managing her gas tank and making it dangerous late, right? Like I think there was a lot of moments where she got some momentum, which was hard to expect after you see her literally get choked out in round one, well, after round one. So I love Weili Zhang's game. I'm a big fan of her as a fighter. I don't see anyone that's going to beat her in this division. Like, I feel like it's going to take these women to develop and to grow a little bit before we see her actually tested as a champ. I think this was a really good fight and it felt closer when I was watching it live. But overall, I feel like this was a good, solid performance by the champ to retain her title, and then of course look forward to the future. I think Yan Shanan's going to be back. This was the kind of fight where you can only gain from, in my opinion. I don't think she loses anything from going 5 hard rounds and showing her mettle, right? Coming back from everything she had to endure in this one as well. But phenomenal fight, man. Considering where this was on the card, this fight fucking lived up, man. This fight was awesome. And a lot of people might not have felt that way because we just got probably the one of the best fights you're ever going to see right beforehand and the best moments. But this fight was awesome, and in my opinion, it really delivered as its co-main event slot.
Yeah, I think with the BMF fight, I think it took the air. It was like it got quiet because you knew you weren't going to see something so crazy. But that fight, like you had pins and needles. Like that's my skin was fucking had goosebumps. I couldn't believe what I just seen. So when you go into this co-main event in the women's strawweight title fight, like you're not you're kind of like disappointed that you can't see it again. Like you wish you could go back to seeing it for the first time. And but with this fight, man, I knew Weili was going to win, and I said this to you when Jan fought last against Jessica Andrade. I did not want to see her in the title fight next. I felt that was a humongous gap from Andrade to Weili. Like there's a significant gap there in fighting. And Mackenzie Dern, Jessica Andrade, Weili Zhang. Like there's just huge discrepancies there. And I said to you then, and I say it to you now, that there should have been one more fight before that. And I get it, there really wasn't anyone to fight, with Tatiana getting hurt and other fighters, within her realm also fighting each other. I get it. And it also makes perfect sense to have a Chinese fighter versus a Chinese fighter for UFC 300. There's always a Chinese fighter, no matter what, who wins. So I get it for the UFC standpoint. But Weili looked dominant. Absolutely expected that from her. But, man, I give all the fucking heart and grit to fucking Jan, man. To get choked out and wake up and still want to still fight. Second round, she almost gets her head put through the fucking canvas. Still comes back to have, I don't know if she won round 3 or round 4 to the judges' scorecards, but to still put up an incredible fight and still go all out. Like, didn't matter what those two were. I don't remember which ones were 10-8s, but to go out there and just fucking dominate and from Weili and to have Jan just not give up. Like, I give so much credit to her because this is like you said, it doesn't really hurt Jan that much losing a UFC 300. I think this is only something to gain. I think you could not have had a harder fight against one of the best champions in this division's history and to get choked out, almost knocked out, and to still go all 25 minutes and to even fight back almost into winning rounds. I think this fight will happen again in the future, and I would love to see Jan have like 2 or 3 fights, maybe just 2 fights in the future to before she fights Weili, We'll put her against a Tatiana Suarez in the future, or against a Viviano we were talking about before. Like, they give me a couple fights from Jan, and then put her against Weili again. I think we got Jan too early, and this is why I hate when that happens, because you're almost like you're pushing Jan for her second fight against Weili after the fact that it should have happened. And I felt like if Jan had fought someone in the top three, won, and then fought Weili, then you're getting a more competitive fight. And while this was competitive, you almost knew after that first round, or even after the second or third minute after Weili had her on the canvas, that this was Weili's fight for the next 23 minutes. Like, this, Weili was much better the whole time. This was her fight to lose. It was almost like you needed something crazy to happen for Jan to even be able to have a chance. And I give all the credit in the world to Jan. I know she'll be back in a title fight picture, while Weili's just on a fucking unbeatable fucking streak. When she lost to Rose that first time, I was blown away and shocked. I thought the second fight was close. I thought Weili won the second fight, even though I'm a huge Rose fan. And to the fact that she had come all the way back around, beat the shit out of Carla Esparza, good fuck her, and got the belt back. I was I was so glad, and I'm glad that she's reigning supreme now. This is her belt, and I have no idea who could take it off of her. And that's why I wanted to ask you really quickly before we get to the main event. Whenever Tatiana comes back and whenever they make that fight, what would you predict the odds to be? Obviously, I think everyone's going to pick Weili to still win, but would you seem that fight to be closer than this fight was with Jan, or do you think it's more still a competitive gap there?
It's a great question, man. Fuck, I don't know, bro. I feel like it definitely will be closer odds wise. Like, I think it'll probably be like in the minus 180 range for Weili Zhang, which is still a pretty big favorite against someone like Tatiana. I just feel like on the feet, she's just so much levels above Tatiana at this point, which is what makes the difference. It's really going to have to be Tatiana's grappling advantage being so big that it can make that much of a difference. But Weili Zhang is just so strong and sturdy. Like, I could see her just outlasting her. So I definitely favor her to win that fight in that matchup. But that's the best matchup out there for her, man. That is a phenomenal fight, and I would love to see it. But at the same time, I still, once again, I just am confident that she's going to be champ for a while. Next up, we've got the main event of UFC 300. God damn it. We've got Alex Poatan Pereira getting the first round knockout. Yo, Herb Dean, hold my beer, bro. I'm about to fucking send this guy back to the favelas, brother. Holy shit, what a knockout. I already spoiled it all, but this is yours. Take the floor, my brother. How did you feel about this main event after you, on this very show, slandered the booking of this fight? How did you feel about this being the main event and how it played out?
Well, I slander it because obviously it was the last possible option that they could come up with. It took them forever to come up with the main event. They had so many other options in there that they even thought about bringing Cheeto and Sean O'Malley to UFC 300, that was an option. So the fact that they made this fight, I think it was a, thanks a lot to the part of Jamal Hill, and I give him that because I think he came back too early, which is what I said in the preview show. And while I don't know if that really takes too much of an effect as to his Achilles injury, as to him getting knocked the fuck out, I do thank him for coming in and taking this fight, because I don't think they were considering it at first because of the fact that he was only 7-8 months from that injury, if I remember correctly, 9 months. So that's tough. Achilles tendon is nothing to fuck around with. That takes a year at the very minimum. So when I saw that he was coming back for this fight, I felt it was a little rushed, but it was still an incredible fight to have Pereira, who is like their next golden goose right now, take the main event at UFC 300. This dude has come, it was just 3 years ago, and he literally signed the paper and had to memorize the 2 sentences in English to say, "Thank you, guys. I am now part of the UFC family." Like, it took him forever to remember that. So the fact that he came in and he's 7-8 fights later, and he's defended the belt now at light heavyweight. He's been a middleweight champ. I 100% give him that. And dude, he looked like he didn't skip a single fucking beat. You know, he went out there and got the revenge tour on Yuri, now on Jamal. He answered everything that Glover Teixeira could have asked for when it came to the end of his career. And there's so many beautiful moments that Twitter just loves to show. That after Jamal Hill beat Glover, you see the stare down from fucking Pereira as he's leaving the cage. Like, I'll see you next. Like, don't forget, I'll be there soon. And crazy circumstances have happened when it came to this division. Yuri winning it, getting that crazy shoulder injury. Then you have Jamal Hill take it from Glover, and then he tears his Achilles, and then Alex Pereira comes in, and then he wins the bell. It was a very weird situation, but overall, it's just such an amazing time, and what a way to end UFC 300, where you get the cup check. You have like one of the very few moments where a guy gets hit and you get the fight of the champion and be like, chill, back up, let me cook this dude real quick. And he just saw it, and Jamal Hill was like, damn, that was pretty fair. Boom, and he's knocked out. Like, it was a perfect way to end UFC 300. I do wish it went a little bit longer, because I did want to see how Jamal Hill looked, you know, coming with the leg kicks, with the torn Achilles, how he would look in the cage past 10 minutes. I did want to see that, but I still think that with that, Pereira's unscathed. I don't know what he has coming next for him. And I think Jamal Hill can take those, 4 or 5 extra months now to recover 100%, because there's no way he was 100% going into this fight. And then, like I said before, getting someone like Yuri, even though, like you said, him getting knocked the fuck out to Yuri knocking somebody else out, that's kind of unfair. But because those two were the former champions and lost it due to injury, that would be a nice little fight to make. But either way, both of their futures are still pretty bright. I give Jamal Hill a lot of credit. He deserves to be the former champ, have the champion in his name. But Pereira, man, it's almost at the point where who the hell is next for him? Because he's beaten the top 3 guys really in there. Rakic should really be the next name, and Ankalaev. And I think that's a humongous test for him, because he's never faced a wrestler. So that's something I see. But we're keeping it on this fight because we'll talk about that in the future. Great performance from Pereira. Perfect way to end UFC 300. What an incredible fucking card. And I cannot wait to see all 12 of those fighters again. Oh, no, what am I saying? All 12 of those fighters, all 12 of those wins, but all fucking 26 of those fighters again. Because, man, do they have a hell of a career. I can't wait.
I love it. I love that you hyped up the whole card there at the end, because it's definitely deserved. I think Alex Pereira really took a big step to obviously further his superstardom, but obviously just towards chasing greatness, man. This was a big time fucking win. I mean, just consider his performance against Blachowicz, and then his performance winning the title. Like, those fights weren't this easy, right? Like, it's getting easier. Um, Yuri gave him a way harder fight than Jamal gave him, and I thought, obviously, you can't deny the reality of the Achilles injury, like you said. Like, I think that's important to mention right off the top, just because 100% that plays a factor. No matter who you ask, I don't care. You need to make that asterisk, because regardless of him saying he was fully back, he admitted that he had a broken toe through Dana White. So there was just a lot going on here. I think ultimately, all things considered, before the knockout, everything considered equal, I thought he looked really good out there, especially with landing outside rangy strikes and establishing himself in that range. Um, this is another fight I would love to see again down the road. I think that both of these guys can really separate themselves in the future, and we'll see if we ever get the chance to see that. I think what made this fight so strange for me, at least, is just obviously the injury factor is important to mention and important to be honest about. But at the same time, I think the actual sequence with the low blow did affect the outcome of this fight, right? Like, shout out to DC and Chael Sonnen for pointing this out, because I didn't really think about it like this in the moment, right? But there was a moment there where there was a stop in the action, and it really forced Jamal against the cage. And don't get me wrong, Alex got him there. But once that low blow stopped the action, when they restarted, it wasn't really a fresh restart. Like he was already caged off, um, and just led for the perfect opportunity for him to land that left hook. Obviously, all credit to Alex Pereira. He did what you asked him to do out there. I don't think he's a dirty fighter. I think he took advantage of a great opportunity. But at the same time, I just feel like this is a fight that we could run back and it'll be completely different. Like, I genuinely believe that, just because I feel we didn't get to really see this fight play out. But once again, it just speaks to the level of striking from Alex Pereira to be able to land a shot like that and just finish this fight entirely. Fucking phenomenal. And I couldn't agree with you more, man. This card, we went 2 hours straight just recapping. Fucking amazing. I love the way we did our coverage for the show as well. Record breaking performances on some of those videos as far as viewership. So shout out to you guys for showing up and really making this special for us too, man. UFC 300 was a celebration for all fight fans across the world, and it felt really special to be able to share in that with you guys and our excitement, looking forward to the card, and then now looking in review. So, Sean, I know it's been a long night. I know we covered a whole lot in these last 2 hours. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
I actually wanted to ask you a question because this is keeping it on this Alex Pereira. Obviously, there is a couple things to say about him, and we'll talk more about it on our next one. But I have seen a lot of I don't even want to say it, but I've seen a lot of hate. Let's keep it clean here from Pereira's side about how he's become a champion, and how much of it is just been luck, right? Him beating Jan, people felt Jan won that fight. Him beating Jiri, people felt that was an early stoppage. And then with this one, just like you mentioned, um, people felt that after the break, Jamal wasn't 100% ready to go yet, and he was too much backed against the cage, led to the knockout 3 seconds later. And the fact Jamal was coming back, 7, 8 months, whatever, from this crazy torn Achilles injury from playing basketball. How much of it is the superstardom of the UFC just promoting the shit out of this fucking guy, that he's better than, that he really is as good? Or is it all just a big fucking fluke, that all these fights have just worked out perfectly in his favor and that he is a champion and all that? So how would you put it from what I just said as being like he is as good as he is, 100, 10 out of 10, to the fluke and the Adesanya dick suckers, to the 1 out of 10 that he's all just been a big fluke and it's not as good as he really is?
So no matter how you slice it, I think it is fair to say that, not that he's a fluke, but that his skills do not represent the level of success that he's had in the UFC. I think that's very fair to of a comparison to make. I think there's a lot of fighters in this division that I would still favor over him in a head-to-head matchup, despite him being the champ. But at the same time, at this point, you can't deny him. Like, you really cannot deny him anymore. This is 100% earned, right? Shout out to Dustin Poirier. This is earned in blood, baby. I really feel like Pereira has separated himself from those talks at this point. I think the fact that we've seen this man win a title at 85 after losing the majority of that fight, after almost getting knocked out, to get a knockout win against a generational fighter, come back, lose, right? Horrible loss, but a fight that you could argue he was winning until he lost too, and then comes back in another division, reestablishes himself. I didn't pick him to win that fight. I thought he was going to lose. And then lo and behold, goes out there and gets the dub against Jan Blachowicz, and then finds himself in the title fight and wins it. Like, this man has earned it. And the fact that you now headline the biggest card in UFC history and finished it with a knockout like that, god damn, brother, that's a moment right there. Um, and I think at this point he deserves to be considered an all-time great, despite there being questions about his skill level and what he's able to accomplish out there. I think it's kind of surreal to see, right? Almost the different paths between him and Glover. Like I feel like Glover, this transition for him out of retirement, this is like best case scenario in my opinion for someone like him to be able to put your life, sweat and tears into someone else, and then to see them realize that success sort of on your back. It's almost like one door closed and another opened for him, and to have this second career now as a coach and someone that's mentoring this champ, and their relationship, like that story is phenomenal. And it's almost like I got the belt and what I did was amazing, but I got it a little too late. Now, like, let's show these motherfuckers what we could do. Like, and I genuinely think he's only gonna continue to get better at MMA. Like, good luck, right? If you're gonna fight that guy, you want him yesterday. And yesterday he's knocking folks out. So fuck, man, this guy's impressive as hell. And I think, although I still doubt, especially in MMA, those ground skills, um, it's hard to deny what he's able to accomplish out there. Even if he goes out there and gets knocked out in his next fight, like I genuinely feel like he's solidified himself as an all-time great in this sport. And what is it? Only what, 6 fights, 7 fights? Dude's a monster, man.
So yeah, I was gonna say it's like only 7 fights. And to answer my own, I would give it like an 8 out of 10 because the one thing that he deserves, it, you can't deny him for what he's already done. To be a champ in 2 different weight classes and to defend it in this light heavyweight thing. And I think if he were to fight Adesanya at any point, which he won't, but I think if that were to have happened to finish that trilogy / 5 fight fucking whatever fiasco, I would give him the competitive edge in that one for as of right now. And the thing is that the only thing that bothers me with him is we have not seen him tested as in his ground game really at all. And I think that's why Ankalaev coming in, I think he's next. I think that would if he beats Ankalaev, I think then there's like you can't deny him at all. Like there's nothing to say. Because to face someone in a wrestling ground game like Ankalaev who will fucking torture you on the mat, I think that if Pereira is to win that fight, whatever, knockout, unanimous decision, split decision, if you win that one, you can't deny. Like there's literally nothing you could do to deny him, even though you really can't deny him now. So that's the one little thing I would say. Like I need to see that next. If you could beat a wrestler because you haven't really faced one yet, you beat a wrestler, okay, because I haven't seen Pereira's wrestling in any sort of capacity. I've never seen him get taken down to the point where I feel comfortable with him getting right back up or finding a way to get back up. So that would be my only hiccup with him. But besides that, can't take away from him. And he keeps it at this rate. The UFC Hall of Fame is so fucking filled with fucking anybody at this point.
He's a Hall of Fame already.
He's already. That's what I'm saying. He's already in the Hall of Fame. So it would take. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows if there's a third weight class he wants to proceed and go and get? And that's something I know we're going to talk about in our next one. But man, this is like I said, UFC 300 was awesome. What a perfect person to put at the main. Incredible fights. Incredible way to end it.
Incredible stories coming out. Like this is our fucking Super Bowl on steroids. Like
100%.
This shit doesn't come once in a year. It comes once every 6 or 7. And god damn it fucking delivered. Fuck all of you fucks that were talking shit about this card. I'm talking to you, Sean.
All right, I didn't talk shit. I just said
you
it could have
talked a
been
lot
better.
of shit.
It could have been better.
I had to talk you off the ledge multiple times because I knew this card was going to deliver. Damn it, and fuck, it did way more than I ever could have imagined. So shout out to everyone, like you said. Looking forward to the future, and guess what, baby? We back next week.
That's right.
In the land of wind and ghosts, the land of pure hatred. Fucking hellscape. Fuck.
Hell yeah.
But hey, nothing speaks to UFC to having a peak event, best event we've ever seen, and then the next time we're out there, we're somewhere in the desert, parts unknown.
Yep.
Goddamn. You hate to see it, but you love it at the same time. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. We can't wait to catch you guys next time. But before we leave, just remember, come here. No matter what happens out there, it's a little sad to say, but Jim Miller ain't gonna be on UFC 400, baby. So enjoy it while we got it. But we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.